Morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving. It's good to see so many people here sharing part of their Thanksgiving to practice together. My name's Kurt, for anyone who doesn't know me, also known as Chung Se-do. I live in Maryland, more or less on the East Coast, even though I'm well over an hour from the ocean. But it's great to see everyone wherever you are this morning. It's always good to acknowledge the importance of the generosity that people show in giving their time to both to do one's own practice, but also to show up at a time and a place, even if that place is online, to practice with others. It's very it's a great gift to have that, to have a group of people that you feel some connection with, and that you can make that to meet with them. You can make that choice. You have that available. Do you have that available? And that you not only have the that opportunity, but that everyone who's here has actually followed up on that opportunity and has shown up. Thank you for that. So the last time I gave a talk in the morning group, and I don't expect anybody to remember what I've said in the past, which I hardly can myself, but it was on Halloween, and now I'm talking again. It's Thanksgiving. But I don't have any a Thanksgiving theme or anything in particular. In fact, this morning I do have a theme or something I want to talk about, which is a topic that can be summed up in six words. They're actually 6 syllables. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Very famous mantra. In Korean Buddhism, it's known as the Great Bright Queen of Mantras, or Daemyeong Wang Jinon. And in fact, it has a longer name. That's kind of the short name. The longer name for it is the Kwanseum Boso Bonchim Mimyo Yukja Daemyeong Wang Jinon. It's a mouthful. It's actually, so if you, there's a practice that Zen Master Seung San brought to the West from Korean Buddhism, and that other teachers who have come to the West from Korea have also brought this teaching as well. It's not something that is exclusive to Zen Master Seung San. It's just a very, very widely, very popular practice among Korean Buddhists, which is a chant called the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. And there's which is a fairly long chant. It's not, you can do the whole chant in less than 15 minutes. If you do it a little bit slower, it might take a little bit longer. But this mantra, along with the title of the mantra, is part of that chant. And so at a certain point, you get to in the chant, and it's actually a very important point in the chant. You say, Kwanseum Boso Bonchi Mimyo Yukcha Daemyeong Wang Jinon Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. And so it's usually done just 3 times, and when a group of people are doing it together, the mantra is recited 3 times. The title is recited once, and the mantra is recited 3 times. If you are inclined to do so, you do this practice on your own. You can recite the mantra as many times as you want. But the full title, the Kwansen Bosal Bonche Mimyo Yokcha Demyong Wang Jinon, the meaning is kind of interesting. It's the subtle and mysterious 6-syllable great, bright queen of mantras that expresses the original mind of Avalokiteshvara. So this mantra is an expression of the original mind of the Bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, or Kwansen Bosal. And it's kind of important to know that, so the word for mind in Korean Buddhism is shim, and shim is here. Shim is here. Not here, but here. So the original mind of Kwansen Bosal is the mind of compassion. And this mantra is an expression of that, of Kwansen Bosal, and the subtle and mysterious mind of compassion of Kwansen Bosal in 6 syllables. So the literal meaning of the title is the subtle and mysterious, right? Subtle and mysterious 6-syllable great bright queen of mantras that expresses the original mind of Kwansen Bosal. And so this is a good, first of all, this is an easy mantra, right? Easy to learn. Om Mani Padme Hum. And if you've never done it before, after a few repetitions, you are well on your way to knowing it by heart. There's a sutra that describes how this mantra was given to us by Kwansen Bosal. So all mantras are teachings from the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, and one of the most important things that Shakyamuni Buddha taught was the importance of how we speak, how we use our speech. And he said that there are four kinds of virtuous speech that we should practice, and 4 kinds of unvirtuous speech that we should avoid. So we should avoid speaking falsely, speaking deceptively. But we should practice speaking the truth. And so the literal word for the word for mantra in Korean Buddhism is jinon, which literally means true words. And so doing mantra practice is a way of practicing virtuous speech, because what you're saying is true. And so how do you know it's true? Well, for starters, it's taught by the story is, so the sutra where it comes from is called the Karandavyuha Sutra, and it's not that long. It's a pretty interesting sutra. It's also it's somewhat confusing in parts. There might be some parts that are missing in what comes down to us. But the story that it tells is pretty clear about where the mantra comes from. There's a very interesting bodhisattva named Sarvanivarana Vishkamban. Sarvanivarana Vishkamban. Say it together with me, everybody. Sarva Nivarana Vishkambin. And a lot of people have never heard of this bodhisattva. He's actually considered to be one of the 8 great bodhisattvas. So one of the things that he's known for is he's the one who brought this, who received this mantra from Avalokiteshvara and brought it to us. And he's also, actually, he's the bodhisattva of meditation, which is kind of interesting. His name literally means something like removing obstacles. In fact, in Korean Buddhism, and I forget how it's pronounced in Korean Buddhism, but instead of trying to say the Sanskrit name Sarvarana Nivarana Vishkambin, they just translated it into Korean, or actually Sino-Korean, and just call him Removing Obstacles Bodhisattva, because that's what the name means. But before Sarvarana Nivarana Vishkambin receives the mantra, he actually receives it from a teacher. He doesn't receive it directly from Avalokiteshvara, but Avalokiteshvara is the one. This teacher won't tell him. This teacher who lived in Varanasi wouldn't tell Sarvarana Nivarana Vishkambin the mantra until Avalokiteshvara appeared in the sky and said, just tell him the mantra, come on. That's paraphrased. That's not what she said. But she said, he is worthy. He has suffered a great deal. He has, practiced for many kalpas or whatever. So tell him the mantra. But before this teacher reveals the mantra, he talks about all the benefits of practicing the mantra. And there's a list of benefits of practicing the mantra, but the climax of this listing of all the benefits of practicing Om Mani Padme Hum is that practicing this mantra is a way to help us to cultivate the 6 paramitas. And so, every mantra is made up of syllables, but in this mantra in particular, there's often attention drawn, as just like in the long Korean title for the mantra, there's attention drawn to the number of syllables in the mantra. And it's not a coincidence that there are 6 syllables in the mantra and there are 6 paramitas. And so the Om in Om Mani Padme Hum corresponds to the paramita of generosity. And the Ma in Om Mani Padme Hum corresponds to the paramita of discipline. Hopefully I get this right. The Ni in Om Mani Padme Hum corresponds to the paramita of patience. The Pad, so in Korean it's actually pronounced more like Ban, Om Mani Padme Hum. The Ban or Pad of Om Mani Padme Hum corresponds to the paramita of diligence. The Me or Me of Om Mani Padme Hum corresponds to the paramita of meditation. And the Hum or Hung, just different ways of pronouncing the same seed syllable. The Hung corresponds to the paramita of wisdom. And so one of the reasons why this mantra is so popular is because it's very short. Another is because it's very, very, very closely associated with Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion. And another reason is because it's closely associated with the practice of the six paramitas, which are the essence of what it means to be a bodhisattva. The six paramitas are the practices of a bodhisattva. In fact, if you have any familiarity with the all of the past life stories that the Buddha told, so sometimes these past life stories are just seen as children's stories, fairy tales. There's actually reasonable. There's reason to believe that there's some connection between the past life stories, also known as the Jataka tales that the Buddha told, and Aesop's fables, because in many of the past life stories that the Buddha told, he and other people appear as animals, so they're talking animals, just like in Aesop's fables, and each Jataka tale has some moral or teaching, just like Aesop's fables. But in the Jataka tales, all of the stories have to do with different paramitas, and sometimes there's more than one paramita. Sometimes it's the exact mapping of a specific Jataka tale to a specific paramita is not always completely clear. But the general idea is that the past life stories of the Buddha describe how he himself, through hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes, worked on these same paramitas, that they were literally his bodhisattva path, his path to Buddhahood. And so the paramitas are kind of important. And so practicing the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra is a way of strengthening one's connection with Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and also a way of helping us to practice the paramitas. And it's important to view the paramitas as practices, as things that are done. So this group meeting here together online is a meeting of people in the Furnace Mountain Mahasangha. And Furnace Mountain was founded by Zen Master Dekak with a lot of help and support from his teacher, Zen Master Sung San. And Zen Master Sung San placed a great deal of emphasis on what he called bodhisattva action. And bodhisattva action is another way of saying paramitas, because paramitas are what bodhisattvas do. They're what they practice. And it's important to emphasize bodhisattva action, because without the action, then we can have an idea of compassion that is nothing more than just feeling bad about the suffering of others or feeling sorry for people. But Zen Master Sung San taught, the first rule of Bodhisattva Club, right? The first rule of Bodhisattva Club is not, don't talk about Bodhisattva Club. The first rule of Bodhisattva Club is, if someone is hungry, give them food. And that was one of the things that Zen Master Sung San came back to over and over and over again in his teaching. Very simple, very direct, but also very real and real activity to help others. And not helping others, well, so it's wonderful if you can help others in more spiritual ways, help people to, on the path or whatever. But if someone is hungry, give them food is the starting point for Zen Master Sung San's approach to what he called, bodhisattva action. So practicing the paramitas is very important. Now, sometimes people have ideas, or what I would term misconceptions, but different. To me, it's a misconception from the way that I've been taught and the way that I have experienced the practice. It's a misconception, but this is what some people think mantras are different, or a special kind of practice that only certain people should or can practice, that you have to receive some sort of permission or empowerment or initiation or secret handshake or whatever before you can practice a mantra. And that might be true in some cases, but certainly it is not true in the case of Om Mani Padme Hum. For one thing, as I mentioned earlier, it's important to know that this is a mantra that is taught in a sutra, and the sutras are exoteric teachings of Buddhism, not esoteric. Esoteric means something that's secret, hidden, only for certain people. Exoteric means open to the public, available to everyone. Any mantra that is taught in a publicly available sutra is exoteric, available to anyone. And also, as I said, Zen Master Sung San taught this to people both as part of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, and also as a mantra practice on its own. And if you can read Korean, which I can't, but I mean I kind of can, very, very clumsily. But if you can read Korean, you can go on the internet and find chanting books written in Korean that have all kinds of information about the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra and the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. But even if you don't know Korean, you can go to different websites. If you look for the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, you can download it. You can download recordings of it. You can watch it on YouTube. So it's freely available to everyone. It's difficult to practice virtuous speech. Even before the invention of Facebook and social media, it was difficult to practice virtuous speech. But the four kinds of virtuous speech are to speak the truth, to speak in a way that causes people to come together and to like each other. That's the second. Speech that brings people together. The third kind of virtuous speech is speech the speech that is kind and gentle and that makes people feel good, that brings happiness to sentient beings. And the fourth kind of virtuous speech is speech that is about things that are important. And so whenever we do mantra practice, it is not only true speech, but it is unifying speech and kind and gentle speech that brings happiness to sentient beings, and also speech that is about, this mantra is about the original mind of the Bodhisattva of compassion. So it is about the most important thing that there is. So it's an interesting mantra to look into, an interesting practice to look into. The Karandavyuha Sutra is also kind of interesting to read. I would encourage people, if this strikes your curiosity at all, to look into that. You can also learn how to write this mantra in Chinese characters, or what's called in Korean hanja. I'm actually working on a series of videos to help people to learn how to do that, which is, as far as learning how to write Chinese characters, it's a fairly easy practice to learn. But again, thank you everybody for being here, for sharing some of your time on Thanksgiving. It's wonderful to see you all, and I'll just end with Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. Thank you for listening.